My name is Jenny Hoang. I'm Chinese. I guess you could say I'm Chinese American, but I generally just say I'm Chinese. I recognize myself as a woman. For the sexuality stuff, I think it's a little more complicated than that. Like I always try to give, let me give you a one-word answer, but I think it's very hard to give a one-word answer. So I date men, I date women, I date a lot of people. I grew up in SoCal and I moved to SGV in my early 20s. I lived here for a couple of years. So I'm a PhD candidate at USC in the American Studies and Ethnicity program. My research is on gender and sexuality. I focus mainly on Taiwan and US relations around the figure of the tomboy. You know, when you say tomboy in the US, you generally think of this pre-pubescent girl who likes to roughhouse and play, but then she'll eventually grow out of it. But in Taiwan, in other parts of Southeast Asia, it's an informal gender and sexuality category of people who are, female-bodied but present as masculine and who date feminine women. It's about presenting yourself in a more gender fluid way. So you might go by he, or you might not go by he, but people still recognize you as very masculine. So my research is on Taiwan and US relations, and I'm interested in thinking about how the tomboy sort of reflects global exchange that happens between Taiwan and the US. So in my research, I've met a lot of people who identify themselves as tomboys, right? And generally they're ethnic Chinese or they're Taiwanese. And in my research, I've also met a lot of organizations that service the queer API community. In terms of my family, I don't know if they really understand what I do. They just know I'm going to school. So I'm engaged to my partner right now. My partner goes by he most of the time, and they met him, and I think so. When I told my family that I like women, it was when I was really young. I was in high school, and I was like, "Hey, mom, dad, I date women too." And I think they took it as, "Oh, it's just you being a kid. You're just experimenting. You're just being silly." But in this last relationship, we're engaged. I think it's caused them a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, even, right? I think there's a generational split too. So people who are younger than maybe 45, all my cousins, younger aunts and uncles, they're okay with it. They understand. They're like, okay, yeah, we accept you. But then for my parents, my grandparents, they either see my relationship with my partner as oh, that's your friend, or that's totally wrong and you're doing the bad things. Professionally, my value system, I have difficulty with the coming out narrative and the desire for acceptance. I don't know if all of us come out and then want some sort of legal recognition. Yes, me and my partner decided to become engaged and eventually we'll get married, but I don't know if marriage means for us we want the state to recognize our love, right? So for what do I think about the future of a queer API community? I think I'm hopeful for just more conversations to happen, not only within the Asian American community, but thinking about the transnational queer community. Because I think there's stuff for us to learn from other models of being queer, right? That maybe don't get highlighted so much in the States. Yeah, I want more, I hope for more dialogue, not only between what does it mean to be gay, what does it mean to be queer, but what does it mean to be Asian? In this, SGV I think is such an interesting space. You walk out here and you're like, oh, Asians everywhere. This is some sort of Asian utopia, right? But that's not how it looks everywhere. And I've had so many interesting experiences here where you know, like I've talked to people who grew up here and they're like, I've never experienced racism. And I'm like, what do you mean? Who are you? Like, where did you grow up? But I think that's actually really common, maybe in the SGV, versus when I was young and I lived, you know, like in places that were predominantly non-Asian, like racism was a daily experience in my life, you know, so I think it's interesting to just ask these questions, and I think people are doing good work to ask these questions. I know at first when I said like, oh, I came out to my family, I didn't come out. So there's no, I think sometimes when we think about coming out, we're like, oh, it's this thing where you like have to prep for it, and then, oh, I'm gonna tell everyone about my innermost self, you know, and I didn't have that. I'm 31, and I think even in my generation, it was still sort of like taboo to be gay, whatever, right? But even then, I remember I just told my parents, I was like, yeah, I like girls, right? And there wasn't a sense of like, oh, now that I've told my parents this, I know myself more, or like I don't know how to say this. Like, it wasn't this big revolutionary moment, which sometimes I feel like there's a lot of pressure for the queer community to have this big revolutionary, you have to come out or else you're in the closet. And I just don't think that's the case. Like, you don't have to come out, you know, like you can just be you and be like, it's not that important. And I think at least in my interviews and my own experience with tomboys and my own personal experience, like that is not the first step, you know. I don't know what the first step is, but it's definitely not announcing that I am this special, unique, sexual person. I think if those are the inspirational words you're looking for, maybe it's just like, you don't have to do it. You don't have to come out. You don't have to be like, I'm gay and I want my rights. Like, you don't need that to be able to say you're your true self. That's what I would say. Yeah.